let me read my conclusion in case you got lost in the discussion. All right, so here's the conclusion to this short little essay that I put together some time ago. Exploring the parallels and contrasts between the Islamic figures of the Mahdi, Isa, and the Dajjal, and their biblical counterparts, the Antichrist, the false prophet, and Jesus Christ, right? Did you catch that? Make sure you're following along, otherwise you're going to get lost here. Islam has three figures. They have the Mahdi, they have Isa, who is Jesus in Arabic, and Dajjal. Those are their three figures. The first two are the good guys, and the last one is the bad guy. Mahdi, Isa, good guys. Dajjal, bad, according to Islamic theology. In Christianity, in biblical theology, eschatology, we have three figures that show up on the scene in the end days as well. Eschatological, three men that are prominent. We have the Antichrist, we have false prophet, and we have Jesus Christ. And the parallel is a one-to-one to the three that I just mentioned in Islam. Those are the parallels there. So don't get lost in these discussions. So considering all six of these figures, what I found is that the parallels reveal significant theological distinctions when we're really comparing the all six figures. Let me break it down for you. The Mahdi's pursuit of justice diverges from the Antichrist's malevolent deception. So notice, even in both religious traditions, Islam and Christianity, the Mahdi represents somebody who's battling evil. And in the Antichrist, we see him as this figure who shows up on the scene originally as a peace giver, as a peace bringer, as a man who's riding the white horse in Revelation chapter 6, and with the opening of the seals and the four horsemen of the apocalypse, the first rider on the white horse holding a bow without any arrows, that's the Antichrist, that's the Mahdi. And even Islam recognizes that he's the rider on the white horse, right? Drawing directly from the book of Revelation. So the Mahdi brings justice in their model, and the Antichrist, he's a bad guy, ultimately in both models, in both both religious traditions. Likewise, I say the Islamic expectation of Isa's return, right, Jesus' return, contrasts with the biblical portrayal of the false prophet as a purveyor of falsehood. So they have their own biblical version of Jesus. It's important to understand that the Islamic version and understanding of Jesus, right, the biblical character known as Jesus, who they call Isa, he's not the Son of God, he's not divine, he's a human being who was taken alive into heaven, so he never died. And because he didn't die, he did not provide redemption by his blood. There was no atoning work for him to do. He never accomplished that. So he's not the savior of the world. He did not save you from your personal sin and shame like Christianity teaches. Their version of Jesus is stripped of his title as Son of God, as the incarnate God, and as the Messiah who brings redemption, right? So he's a different Jesus, but he's still the historical character that they read about in the Bible. So that's where we have some comparisons and contrasts. And then lastly, in this short little essay, I mentioned that the Dajjal's false Messiah status stands in direct opposition to the redemptive role of Jesus Christ in Christian theology. So there's the one-to-one correlation there. They have their bad guy, right, their Joker character who needs to do battle against Batman and Robin. And in so doing, they have their expectation that the good guys are going to defeat the bad guy. In their eschatological story, there is a battle that takes place between the good guys and the bad guy. And in the story, they expect the good guys to win. Well, in biblical eschatology, when you read through the book of Revelation, we have the Antichrist and the false Messiah as bad guys, the dynamic duo, but bad, right? So an evil Batman and an evil Robin, not good guys, but bad guys. So Antichrist and false prophet, they are the bad pair, the bad duo, and they do battle against the good guy, Jesus Christ, who comes back on a white horse to defeat them. And so the parallel similarity is that the good guy wins in both religious eschatological narratives. The bad guy or the bad component gets defeated. It's just, in case you can't tell, what we're talking about is a complete, almost reversal of who the good guys and who the bad guys truly are. Remember, according to Islam, the Dajjal is actually a man who shows up on the scene claiming to be Jesus, seeking to deceive people and to convert people away from the true religion of Islam into the false religion of Christianity or Judaism. And therefore, he's going to win many Jews and Christians over to his religion, which, according to Islam, is a false religion. So that's the way to kind of try to make sense of how they see that the good guy and the bad guy do battle, and the good guys win and the bad guy eventually loses. So as I'm drawing this study to a close, we're about 10 minutes before the hour is up. And I might end just a little early for this part tonight. I don't want to jump into Joel Richardson's material just yet. Maybe I'll just give you a whet your appetite towards it. But let me provide this final paragraph in my own short essay here, because I want, as I'm winding down, I want to emphasize this point again. I don't want people to misunderstand my approach here. I'm bringing in this topic of Islam not for the purpose of not the purpose of revealing how evil and wicked and demonic they are, or something of that sort. I have my own understanding of who Islam represents in the end time scenario and the story, and most Christians do as well. But to the degree that Muslims are humans just like all of us, just like we Christians, right? They're humans, and they have to face God someday just like I do. There's a coming judgment day according to the Bible. And all men have to face God and give an account of what they believe and how they live their life in accordance to those beliefs. So to the degree that Christians are not perfect, we don't have a perfect understanding of who God is and the way his word is put together. We approach God in faith. We believe that Jesus is the one true Messiah that brings genuine salvation and a genuine relationship with God. And therefore believe that the Bible is the only true representation of truth in the world. Objective truth. Therefore, we're going to do our best to witness to those who are not believers, such as ours, right? We meet people of other faiths and other religions, and while we respect their religion and their faith, at the same time, we're going to have this desire to witness to them. At least we should. Why? Because we've been given this great commission to take this truth and to take it into all the world. So we've got the Great Commission, right? That is our mandate, to spread the good news, to share the gospel, the good news that only Jesus can save you. Only his truth is going to stand in the end. But to the degree that Islam brings some meaningful discussion to the table, I'm open to dialogue in that regards. I'm not going to just kick people to the curb and say, "What are you, crazy? You heretic? You false believer? You devil? Get away from me!" That's not the approach I'm trying to take. So I don't want you to view this as some. Again, I'm not trying to demonize Islam. I'm not trying to slam Muslims as people. As far as I can tell, most Muslims are just good-loving people, and they're seeking to live peaceably with others. They have their differences. They have their own religious beliefs. They have their own scriptures, their tradition, etc., etc. But they want many of the same things that I want. So with that being said, in these last 8 minutes or so, let me read this final paragraph, and perhaps you can sense that as you listen to this, as I pen these words. These are my own thoughts. Engaging in these comparative analyses deepens our understanding of both Islamic eschatology and biblical prophecy. Yeah, it really does. And I'm not saying you have to be an expert on Islamic eschatology. You really don't. But to the degree that biblical eschatology involves end-time scenarios that are likely to envelop the entire world one day, then we owe it to ourselves as Christians to be at least familiar with some of the key players in Islamic eschatology, etc., etc. And I say that because of the relationship between Islam and Christianity itself. Recall that there are multiple religions in the world today that have no real interaction with Christianity. There's no parallel going on, right? As far as I can tell, Buddhism and religions like that, there's no parallel with Christianity. There's no interaction that takes place between Christians and Buddhists with shared scriptures, shared traditions, shared eschatological outtakes and narratives and figures and signs and things like that. There aren't any of those. All right, I just mentioned Buddhism because that's the first one that popped into my head. Sure, that you can fill in the blank with any number of religions. But when we look at the three main Abrahamic religions in the world today, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, there are a lot of shared parallels and similarities between those religions. We all have roots in Abraham. That's why I call them Abrahamic faiths. To some degree or another, we're all of us are monotheistic in our belief. We believe in one God, all three of us, all three religions. And at least two of us, the Christian and Islamic religions, we have strongly developed eschatological scenarios that involve a key player coming onto the scene to usher in an era of peace and prosperity, but not without a fight, a culmination of a final judgment and things like that. So that's the kind of the scope of the narrative that we're dealing with here. And that's what I want you guys not to lose sight of. I go on to say, in closing, while recognizing shared themes, I believe it's crucial to acknowledge the theological divergences that stem from differing scriptural interpretations. Right? We all have our religious scriptures and we all interpret them in our own ways according to our own understanding of what those scriptures mean. So we all have access to the same materials. I could go to the store and buy a Quran and read it for myself, walk away with my own understanding of what I just read. Likewise, a Muslim can go to the store and buy a Bible and read it and walk away with an understanding according to his own experience, etc., etc. So that's the point I'm trying to bring up. I go on to say, by fostering dialogue and respectful engagement, I believe that we can appreciate the complexity of eschatological perspectives and gain insights into the diverse paths that believers traverse while contemplating, these are my own thoughts, while contemplating the ultimate fulfillment of God's plan for humanity. So don't misunderstand my approach here as I'm saying this in closing. I'm not on my high horse to throw other religions under the bus and to expose all the errors. In truth, I do believe that other religions have their own good that they can bring to a discussion, right? There's some value, some pros, you could say, that can be highlighted, and there are things that we can learn from one another as religious followers of our own particular religions, as we learn to get along and make this world a better place for each other. So I'm recognizing that. What I am not advocating is some form of harmonizing or syncretism between the religions. I'm not advancing that thought. I'm not suggesting that that's what we need to do. I'm not suggesting that Islam and Christianity somehow need to merge, shake hands with one another, and share recipes, swap recipes, as it were, so that we can both learn to advance our own religious agendas or something like that. I'm not talking about any sort of syncretism between the two. That doesn't work either. I'm simply talking about respecting one another from a mutual position of realizing that we're all in the same boat when it comes to dealing with truth and dealing with a God that we're going to have to face one day. There's only one God who created all things. He is our creator, whether you're religion A, B, or C. And so there's only one way to properly understand this God. I am going to over and over advocate that is through the Bible, through the only authoritative truth that exists out there. All other scriptural traditions bring measured amounts of truth, a little bit of truth, and a lot of error, or a little bit of error, depending. So which religion you're looking at. So that's really going to be it for this particular topic that we looked at tonight. This is just kind of a whetting your appetite into this topic, exploring parallels and contrasts. The Islamic Mahdi, the Muslim Jesus Isa, and the Dajjal in relation to the biblical Antichrist, false prophet, and Jesus Christ. Let's look at my topical schedule real quick. Just remember, we're in topic 7, Excursus, the Islamic Antichrist per Joel Richardson. So starting next week, we'll begin to look at Mr. Richardson's book on the Islamic Antichrist. And I'm going to jump straight into chapter 5 eventually, as you can see on your screen, comparing the biblical Antichrist and the Mahdi. That's where we're going to get a lot of our discussion. I'm not really going to do any deep dives into the Muslim Jesus, Isa, and the Dajjal per se. Since this is a topic about the Antichrist and the biblical figure known as the Antichrist, right? We've already looked at Van Kampen's view. Now let's allow Mr. Richardson to present us with a perspective that I can promise you most Christians have never heard of, the Islamic version of Antichrist. But that's going to do it for eschatology, a biblical study of end time events.